Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Fraley, and I am the Associate Dean for Conduct and Integrity here at Longwood University, and I also serve as the University Title IX Coordinator. I'd like to talk to you today about our student conduct process, hence the title of our webinar this evening, On Your Honor, Student Conduct Process. At this time, if you would be so kind as to turn off your webcams for us, that would be great. Sometimes if we have webcams that are coming from our participants, they create technical difficulties on our end of the webinar. So if you could go ahead and turn those off, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. So I'm going to direct your attention today to my PowerPoint presentation and our slides that I'm going to run through with you. This is a little bit of an overview as to what my office does. So located in my office, which is the Office of Student Conduct and Integrity, are several people. Myself as the Associate Dean of Conduct and Integrity. Also, I have Sarah Loth, who is my Assistant Director, Sasha Johnson, who is our Education and Prevention Coordinator, as well as Angela Whitaker, who is our Administrative Assistant, and she keeps us all on track. So today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Longwood's philosophy regarding the student conduct system, an overview of that student conduct system, and then a little bit about how a student conduct hearing works and operates, and what students could expect if they encounter that system. So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about philosophy and purpose. The Longwood University Student Conduct System is an educationally based system. It is not criminal or civil in nature, it is administrative. And being administrative, we can keep our system very student-focused. We really emphasize the citizen leader growth of students and using the teachable moments that come with making mistakes as an opportunity for growth for your students. We don't see that most of our violations of the Student Code of Conduct or the Honor Code as being absolutely detrimental to your students' growth and development at Longwood University, but we do need to hold them accountable for their mistakes and help them grow from those mistakes. Now, that's not to say that some mistakes aren't at the level where we need to ask them to take some time off, or potentially some of those mistakes are very egregious, and therefore we need to ask them to separate from our community. But by and large, that is not the case. And our statistics back this up. By and large, our opportunities for growth come in those lower level offenses from our Student Code of Conduct as well as our Honor Code of Conduct. And they really are those teachable moments that we can have really good conversations with students about their actions, about the repercussions of those actions on themselves as well as the community around them, and how they can learn and grow from those incidents, from those experiences. So we do really focus on four things. We are a student-focused system. We focus on the accountability and making sure that students are being held accountable for their behaviors and what our community standards are. We give them those opportunities for growth, utilizing our student conduct system to do that, to provide for those opportunities, and we do emphasize that student learning. And the goal of that system is educational. Really it is. It's not punishment. Sometimes it can be a little punitive depending on the case. But the system is really intended to give students a chance to change their behavior rather than delay their educational process. And students actually have a large part in this system. I'm going to talk a little bit later about some of our different adjudication boards, which are actually student-run. And unlike most colleges and universities across the country, Longwood still uses a primarily student-run conduct system to provide for community standards that are very student-based. And I'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, so but first and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about our student population. Our student population are your students. They are mostly traditionally aged college students in that 17 to 22, 23-year-old range. And so talking about student development theory and where our student conduct system is based in terms of student development theory, these are the things that our student population struggles with. They struggle in terms of age-related developmental tasks. This is where we get those teachable moments. Not everyone is as mature as everyone else, and therefore there's a little bit of a lag sometimes in how people respond to different situations when they're presented with being an adult all of a sudden, when they're presented with adult choices that they may not have had experience with before. Additionally, people differ in the meaning that they give to their experiences. One experience for one student could be different than another for another student, and it may take years for a student to realize the full impact of a particular incident or experience. And that just depends on how people give meaning to those experiences. Sometimes people learn from it a little bit quicker, sometimes it takes a little bit of time and a little bit more processing. And then, of course, people differ in the way that they learn and grow and develop. And those differences are really important in terms of being able to craft those educational experiences based on any violations that might take place to be able to give students that teachable moment that is tailored to their experience. And we try to do that through our developmental conversation. All right, so in terms of our honor code, all of your students, when they attended New Lancer Days this fall, they took part in our honor and integrity ceremony. And this ceremony is a ceremony that defines what these 12 points of the honor code are, and really conveys to your students the gravity of the honor code, which is a vibrant part of the fabric of our community. The faculty, staff, and all the students, they take this pledge that they shall not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. We ask students to participate in that honor and integrity ceremony so that they can really feel the gravity of that experience, of the expectations that our community has put on them. And that honor code really represents the standards of integrity and responsibility that all student groups, organizations are expected to follow. And it really is considered a violation itself to fail to report those that have witnessed other people violating that code. So they all sign their pledge card when they participate in the honor and integrity ceremony. And most faculty and instructors actually require that students place that honor statement on assignments, on exams, to remind students that they are being held accountable to that honor code. So here are some things in the student handbook that we really stress to students. During New Lancer Days, I have an opportunity to talk with your students, to really communicate with them about what is contained in the student handbook, what are the major details of the student conduct process. Some things that you should know that we emphasize to your students is that they are students regardless of whether they are on campus or off campus. And they are held accountable for their behavior both. So I will receive sometimes police reports from the Farmville Police Department as well as other localities if the students are identified as Longwood in those reports. We actually have a cooperative agreement with the Farmville Police Department, so the Longwood University Police Department and the Farmville Police Department communicate regularly. Both police officers have jurisdiction in both areas, both on campus and off campus, to help facilitate that relationship. So we like to stress to students and remind them that just because they walk outside of the triangle of our Longwood community doesn't mean that they don't still remain accountable to the behaviors and the code of conduct that we expect of them. So that is sometimes something that students forget, as well as get a little confused about in terms of why we would be holding them accountable for behavior on and off campus. And we stress and remind them during New Lancer Days that just because you're off campus doesn't mean that you're not still a student. Now, of course, if you stop being a student, then you're not held accountable to our code of conduct. But while students our students are taking classes, and even in the summertime type of things, they still are our students, and therefore we do hold them accountable. Now, located in our student handbook are a variety of resources and a wealth of knowledge for students, and we really stress to our students that they really do need to read that student handbook. So if you're having a conversation with your students, it would be great if you could help us out a little bit and remind them that all of this information is in that student handbook. And it is really very easy to get to. We have a shortcut developed for that purpose. So if you type in longwood.edu/student handbook, all one word, you can actually pull up our student handbook. And that is updated every semester or is necessary if things change that are significant for students. And that is where they can find all of the rights and responsibilities that they have as students. It talks about what are their due process rights as defined by the student handbook. It talks about their hearing procedures, appeals processes, as well as different resources that are available to them. And so we really do ask that they read that information so that they have a good grasp of what is contained in that document and what they're being held accountable to. We talk about it specifically when we're talking about due process for students as required by the student handbook, because there are a couple of things that are required by law to provide to students in terms of due process. We go a little bit above and beyond what is legally required because we think that it's fair and equitable for us to do so. So in terms of our due process, we provide students with standards of behavior. That is that honor code as well as the code of conduct standards and regulations. If there were to be alleged violations of either the code of conduct or the honor code, we provide students then a notice of charges, letting them know that there are allegations that have been put forth that say that the student has potentially violated that code of conduct or the honor code. We also invite them to participate in a pre-hearing process with us that will give them access to all of the evidence that has been submitted in terms of those potential violations. And then also we provide for them a hearing process with adequate notice to give them a chance to really tell their side of the story. Our adjudicating bodies, all of our hearing bodies, go into all of the various hearings that we have with the assumption that the students being accused of violations of the code of conduct or the honor code are innocent, that they're not responsible for those alleged violations. The burden is on the complainant in those cases, those people that are putting forth those charges to prove based on a preponderance of evidence, which is 51% to 49%, that the student involved is in violation of that code of conduct or honor code. So we provide for that hearing so that the complainant, again, those people that are putting forth the charges, have an opportunity to state their side of the story as to why they feel that a student is in violation. And then we have that same opportunity to make sure that the respondent in that case, which are the students that are responding to those alleged violations, have an opportunity to tell their side of the story as to why they are not in violation of those conduct standards or honor code. But again, the burden of proof for cases is actually on the complainant to provide enough evidence in terms of the 51% to convince the adjudicating body, the hearing body that is hearing the case, that there is responsibility in that case. Okay, so we talked a little bit about that student handbook, and I provided the link up there on the page, so that www.longwood.edu/student handbook, again, all one word. That is, again, updated every semester or is necessary, and I would encourage you all, as parents and families, to take a look at that student handbook, to familiarize yourself if you would like. We're always open to having phone calls and questions in our office. But a lot of information can be found right in the student handbook, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. Some of the things that we stressed during New Lancer Days were the following. That code of conduct that spells out all of the standards and regulations for behaviors for our students and where our community standards and expectations are. We also went over that honor code of conduct, not just only in that honor and integrity ceremony, but also in that New Lancer Days session. The honor code, of course, covers that lying, cheating, and stealing, as well as all academic integrity issues as well. So we talked about that with your students. We emphasized specifically our alcohol and drug policy, which is statistically where our incoming students have some of the highest violations. And we don't have a huge number of violations that come through my office. About 6% of the entire student population visits my office in one respect or another throughout the academic year. So really that is not a large percentage of our student body, but statistically the incoming class has most contact with our alcohol and drug policy. Additionally, we stress our sexual misconduct policy, not just in terms of being a respondent for that particular policy, but perhaps also a complainant if something unfortunate were to happen to one of our students, and what resources are available for our students, faculty, and staff in that particular policy. And then also we stress our residential and commuter life section of our student handbook. This is really the core of the information that is in that handbook in terms of residential and commuter life, because one or the other, being a residential student or a commuter student, that information touches all of our students. And so we make sure that we emphasize those 5 areas first and foremost in that New Lancer Day session to give our students a good foundation as to what they need to know and how they can transition into our community smoothly. All right, so to give you a little bit of information about some of those adjudicating boards, those hearing bodies that I was talking to you a little bit earlier about, in terms of the honor board as well as the conduct board, these are our student-run boards. Our honor board and our conduct board are actually elected students, so they are peers of your students, and I encourage you to encourage your students to get involved with these particular boards. These boards are elected by the student body. They are the students that their fellow students decide that they would like to have help enforce our honor code and our conduct code. So these people that serve on our honor board and our conduct board really make a commitment to our values, to being citizen leaders, and to upholding our community standards. And so for this year, our chairs and our vice chairs are listed, and they are students that are very well trained. We spend a significant amount of time training all of our students that participate in these boards after they're elected, to make sure that they are providing the best opportunities for students that are alleged to have committed violations of the code of conduct as well as the honor code. But I would encourage you to encourage your students, if they're interested in community standards or interested in this type of work, to get involved in this way. They are elected by the student body. And they can run for these positions, not just the executive positions that you see listed, but also the boards themselves are comprised of 12 to 14 members. And there are 2 conduct boards and 1 honor board, and so that is a significant group of students that is elected through the Student Government Association to serve in these roles. Now, all of our hearing bodies, which are again listed in our student handbook, can be described above. I already mentioned the conduct board and the honor board. I also want to mention our administrative hearing officers. These are professional staff members that also hear cases for us. There are circumstances where we need to hear cases in a more expedient manner, or there are special circumstances in the case in terms of confidentiality or different intricacies to the case that would require an administrative hearing officer instead of adjudicating a case through the conduct board or the honor board. So those professional staff members that work for my office as well as other offices across campus are again specially trained to adjudicate cases and to hear cases that allege violations of both the Honor Code of Conduct as well as the Code of Conduct standards and regulations. Another hearing body that we use is the University Disciplinary Board. The University Disciplinary Board is primarily used for some of the most egregious cases that we might see. This disciplinary board also takes cases that involve registered student organizations. And so they will adjudicate those particular cases, and that University Disciplinary Board is made up of faculty, staff, and students. And so that board takes a look at some of the more egregious cases as well as the student organization cases. And then one of our other hearing bodies is the Academic Integrity Appeals Committee. That is a specific subset of the honor system. If there is an appeal that extends from an honor board case or an administrative hearing officer case that involves academic integrity, that academic integrity issue goes to the Academic Integrity Appeals Committee because we like to ensure that for appeals of academic integrity that faculty are involved in that appeal decision. And so that has a specific appeal committee for that purpose. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about what are possible sanctions. I talked earlier about the fact that this is an educational process, that we want our students to succeed in our student conduct process and to really utilize those teachable moments. Here are some of the possible sanctions that students could face if they are found in violation, if they're found responsible for violating any of the honor or the conduct codes. Admonition is really a fancy way of saying warning, but we do issue letters of admonition to students. That is a letter of warning that explains that they were found in violation of a particular code of conduct or honor code of conduct standards and regulations. And we give them that warning to say, you've been found in violation, please learn from this experience, and this is what you need to do moving forward. Everyone in our system, except for expulsion, receives an educational assignment of some sort. That's that teachable moment. And there is a variety of educational assignments that we can assign to your students. If we're talking about the alcohol and drug policy, we have specific alcohol and drug education classes that they may be assigned to. If you're talking about an academic integrity issue, it could be that we would send a student to a plagiarism workshop to learn about plagiarism if they have plagiarized in some fashion, so that they really get that education that they need to make sure that they don't make that mistake again. So we really try to tailor all of those educational assignments and educational sanctions to the specifics of the case. And it depends on those specifics as to what we will assign. So moving up the scale a little bit is disciplinary probation. That is an official change of status with the university in terms of disciplinary status. That does not have anything to do with academic status. Sometimes students get very concerned that those two things are the same. They are not. And we explain that to students when we are talking to them about those sanctions. So please, for your reference, please know that disciplinary probation and academic probation are two very different things. Disciplinary probation is a change in disciplinary status with the university, and that is a set period of time. So that means that within that set period of time that a student may be placed on disciplinary probation, that a couple of things occur. First and foremost, if they're found in violation of any additional code of conduct or honor code violations, then the sanctioning in that subsequent case could be more harsh. It depends on the facts of the case. It depends on what violations we're looking at for those subsequent cases if that occurs. Most often it does not, but sometimes there are subsequent cases. And if that were to occur, then the sanctioning for that subsequent case could be harsher based on the fact that a student was already on disciplinary probation during that particular set period of time. The other things that occur during that disciplinary probation period of time is that students are ineligible to join certain clubs or organizations, as well as serve in some employment opportunities on campus. So for example, students that are on disciplinary probation would not be eligible to run for SGA election. They would not be eligible to apply to be a resident assistant. They would not be eligible to apply to be employed as a peer mentor, those sorts of things, because of their disciplinary status with the university. But again, that disciplinary status in terms of disciplinary probation is a set period of time. So there is a start date and an end date. And once that end date has expired, then their disciplinary status reverts to being in good standing with the university. The next level of possible sanctions is suspension. In terms of suspension, this is not a severing of ties with the university. We actually keep in close contact with students who are suspended for a variety of reasons. However, there are violations in our code of conduct and in our honor code that unfortunately do at times necessitate a suspension. We ask that students take a semester or a year off. It depends on the specifics in the case as to how long that suspension can last. And we ask that they take some time to think about their behavior, think about their actions, but we ask them to stay in touch with us. We also provide for educational assignments and sanctions during that suspension period because we want to see students learn and grow from that experience and then to reapply to the university to come back. We actually provide them with information, write in any letters that would be provided to them in terms of their suspension with education and instructions as to how to reapply because we do want them to return to our community and we do want them to be successful. We just feel that at that particular moment, they need to take some time off and regroup to learn from that particular situation and then come back and move forward in a positive direction. And then our most severe sanction is expulsion from the university. So expulsion is a permanent severing of ties with the university. Students at that point are not asked to reapply to the university to return to our community. That's the most severe sanction, and there is quite a bit of gravity with that decision, and we take that very seriously. Based on our statistics, we expel between 1 and 2 students per academic year, so you can see that that is not a sanction that we participate in frequently. We don't like to go down that road, but on occasion that is required of us based on behaviors and violations of the Student Code of Conduct and Honor Code. All right. So if you're looking for more information just generally about my office, what we do, again, the student handbook is linked on our page as well as information about our conduct and honor boards. I encourage you to visit our quick link, thelongwood.edu/student-conduct, all one word, to learn some more information about our office and what we can offer to students. We have an open door policy in our office. Any of our staff members are happy to meet with students to talk about the student handbook, the code of conduct, the honor code of conduct, to talk about different opportunities to get involved in my office with both the honor and the conduct boards, as well as some of the different committees that we have associated with my office that talk about our policies, procedures, and changes that students would like to see made. So if your students are interested in those opportunities, please send them our way. We would be happy to speak with them about that. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Okay, all right. Well, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them if you'd like to toss them into the chat feature of our webinar. And if not, we will be good to go. All right, well then thank you so much for joining us for On Your Honor, our student conduct process. We hope that we have provided you with some information, and have a good evening.